It all began on an ordinary day, the kind where nothing out of the ordinary is expected. I was having coffee with a close friend when, in a casual, almost off-handed tone, she mentioned something about my son that immediately caught my attention. At first, I brushed it off, thinking that she must have misunderstood or exaggerated. After all, I knew my son, knew his habits, his personality, his character. He had always seemed so ordinary, so predictable in his ways. The very idea that there could be something strange or unusual about him felt almost absurd. Yet, despite my initial disbelief, I couldn't completely dismiss the comment. There was a spark of curiosity I hadn't expected. Subtle at first, a tiny seed of wonder planted in the back of my mind, but it grew quickly. I found myself thinking about it more than I wanted to admit, questioning whether there could be an aspect of my son that I had overlooked, a hidden talent, a secret habit, or even a mischief I hadn't yet discovered. The thought made me uneasy and intrigued at the same time. How could someone I thought I knew so well surprise me in a way that seemed so mysterious? As a parent, you often believe you understand your child completely, but that comment challenged that assumption. The feeling was strange, part disbelief, part concern, and part undeniable curiosity. I started reflecting on my past interactions with him, trying to recall any clues or subtle hints I had missed. Nothing obvious came to mind, which only heightened the sense of mystery. That day, I realized that curiosity, when combined with love and care, can be a powerful motivator. Even though I didn't want to admit it, a part of me wanted to investigate, not out of distrust, but out of a desire to understand, to see a side of my son that had remained hidden. And so, with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue, I made the decision to pay closer attention, to watch and to notice the small things that might reveal what others had hinted at. What started as a casual conversation had sparked a journey into observation, reflection, and eventually discovery. After that initial spark of curiosity, I found myself caught in an unexpected internal struggle, a tug of war between trust and doubt. On one hand, I had always trusted my son. I had watched him grow, seen the values instilled in him, and believed in the honesty and integrity he had consistently shown. In my mind, he was reliable, kind-hearted, and straightforward. The idea that he could be involved in something unusual or worse, questionable, felt almost like a personal betrayal of that trust, even though I had no concrete reason to believe it. Yet, on the other hand, there was this lingering seed of doubt planted by the comment I had overheard. It refused to disappear, no matter how hard I tried to push it aside. Every time I thought about my son, I couldn't help but replay the conversation in my mind, wondering whether there might be truth hidden beneath the surface. Could there is something about him that I hadn't seen, something that only others had noticed? These questions gnawed at me, creating an uneasy tension between what I wanted to believe and what I felt I needed to investigate. This internal conflict was both confusing and exhausting. As a parent, you want to give your child the benefit of the doubt, to approach them with love and understanding rather than suspicion. Yet, as a human being, you also feel compelled to protect, to be vigilant, and to ensure that nothing harmful, physically, emotionally, or socially, is happening under your watch. The challenge, I realized, was finding the balance between these instincts, maintaining my trust in my son while also acknowledging that sometimes observation and awareness are necessary. The situation forced me to confront my own assumptions about parenting and perception. I had always believed that knowing my child meant I could predict his behavior, but this episode reminded me that people are complex and multifaceted. Trust, while essential, cannot exist in isolation from awareness. Doubt, when tempered with love and careful observation, doesn't undermine trust. It can deepen understanding.
Ultimately, this period of internal conflict prepared me for what was to come. It allowed me to step into a mindset of cautious curiosity rather than blind belief or unwarranted suspicion. I realized that to truly understand my son, I would have to navigate the delicate line between faith in who he is and openness to discovering who he might secretly be.
After wrestling with my conflicting feelings of trust and doubt, I realized that doing nothing was not an option. Ignoring the comment I had heard felt irresponsible, yet acting out of suspicion alone could damage the trust I had built with my son over the years. What I needed was a balanced approach, a way to understand the situation without jumping to conclusions or treating him unfairly. That's when I made the conscious decision to observe him carefully, not as a parent spying out of distrust, but as a guardian seeking to better understand a child I loved. The decision to watch him closely was not immediate. It took reflection and a deliberate shift in perspective. I reminded myself that observation does not equal accusation. Instead, it could be an opportunity to learn more about him, to see parts of his personality or behavior that might have gone unnoticed. I approached this decision with a sense of responsibility. My goal was not to catch him doing something wrong, but to gain insight into his world, to understand the truth behind the strange rumor I had heard. I also recognized that observation required patience and subtlety. I couldn't suddenly start questioning him at every turn or scrutinizing every action, as that would make him feel mistrusted. Instead, I resolved to pay attention to the small details of his daily life, how he interacted with friends, how he handled challenges, the choices he made when he thought no one was watching. By doing so, I hope to gather an honest and genuine picture of who he truly was. This decision was guided by a mix of intuition and parental instinct. Deep down, I sensed that my son was not someone who would deliberately deceive or harm, and yet I understood the importance of remaining vigilant. Life is full of surprises, especially in the lives of children growing into their own personalities. Watching him was a way to bridge the gap between my love and concern, my belief, and my curiosity. Finally, I acknowledged that this decision to observe was also a personal lesson in humility. It reminded me that, even as a parent, I cannot know everything about my child, and that discovering who they are sometimes requires stepping back, paying attention, and allowing them to reveal themselves naturally. By choosing careful observation, I was preparing myself not only to uncover the truth, but also to grow alongside him, to deepen our connection, and to approach the unknown with patience rather than fear. Once I made the decision to observe my son more closely, I began to notice subtle signs, small, almost imperceptible behaviors that I had previously overlooked. At first, they seemed insignificant, a fleeting expression, a hesitation before answering a question, or an unusually intense focus on certain activities. Yet, as I paid closer attention, patterns started to emerge. It was as if my earlier disbelief had blinded me to details that were now suddenly impossible to ignore. One of the first things I noticed was the way he handled his free time. Previously, I had assumed he was simply engrossed in typical hobbies, but I began to see a meticulousness and curiosity in his actions that went beyond casual interest. He seemed to explore tasks with an intensity and creativity I hadn't fully appreciated before. For example, he might spend an hour quietly arranging small objects in precise patterns or experimenting with a concept in ways that revealed a thoughtfulness I had not associated with him. These behaviors were subtle, but they suggested a depth of observation and engagement that was unusual for someone his age. I also began to notice changes in his interactions with others. While he had always been polite and respectful, there were moments when he displayed empathy and understanding that felt beyond his years. He seemed to anticipate needs, notice small emotional cues, and respond in ways that suggested he was paying close attention to people around him in ways I hadn't realized.
These early observations were fascinating because they contradicted the image I had of him as just a typical kid. Another sign was his reaction to challenges. I observed him tackling problems with a combination of patience and innovation. He didn't give up easily, nor did he rush. Instead, he experimented, adapted, and learned from small mistakes. It was during these moments that I realized there was more to him than surface appearances suggested. These early observations sparked a mix of emotions in me: pride, surprise, and curiosity. I realized that the more I watched, the more I understood that my son was far more complex than I had imagined. Each small sign, each subtle behavior, was a clue revealing his true nature. What had started as a casual, almost skeptical observation was beginning to feel like a journey of discovery, opening my eyes to the depth and richness of my son's personality.
As I continued observing my son, what started as casual curiosity quickly turned into a series of unexpected discoveries that completely shifted my perception of him. These were not dramatic revelations or shocking behaviors, but subtle, profound insights that revealed layers of his personality I had never seen before. Each new observation felt like uncovering a hidden facet of someone I thought I knew completely, reminding me that no matter how well you think you understand someone, there is always more beneath the surface. One of the first surprising things I noticed was his incredible sense of creativity and problem solving. There were moments when he approached challenges in ways I would never have imagined, coming up with solutions that were both inventive and logical, blending imagination with practical reasoning. For example, I watched him figure out a way to organize a project or repair something around the house using materials I would have overlooked. It wasn't just resourcefulness, it was the quiet confidence and determination with which he executed these ideas that struck me as extraordinary. Another discovery was his empathy and awareness of others. Through careful observation, I realized that he was not only noticing what people said, but also how they felt. He had a subtle way of responding to emotions, offering help or support when it was needed, even without being asked. It was as if he carried an intuitive understanding of others' needs, a sensitivity that I had never fully appreciated until I was intentionally watching for it. This awareness extended beyond family and friends. He showed thoughtfulness towards strangers, animals, and even his environment, demonstrating a depth of character that quietly surprised me. I also discovered his resilience and patience. I noticed how he handled small setbacks and frustrations, whether it was a difficult task, a mistake in a project, or a challenge with a friend. Instead of giving up, he adapted, learned from the experience, and persisted until he achieved his goal. Watching him in these moments, I realized that he had developed a self-discipline and inner strength far beyond what I had assumed for someone his age. These unexpected discoveries filled me with a mixture of pride, amazement, and humility. They reminded me that my role as a parent was not just to guide him, but to continue learning from him. Observing him allowed me to appreciate his unique qualities, his potential, and the remarkable person he was becoming. It was a lesson in patience, attention, and the importance of truly seeing the people we love. As I watched my son more closely and began uncovering these unexpected facets of his personality, I experienced a whirlwind of emotions that I hadn't anticipated. At first, there was shock. Shock not because he had done anything wrong, but because he continually surprised me. The more I observed, the more I realized how little I truly knew about his inner world. The small, subtle details, the creativity, empathy, patience, and resilience revealed a depth of character that I had somehow overlooked. It was a reminder that children, like all people, are far more complex than they seem on the surface, and that even those we love most can hold surprises that leave us both stunned and inspired. Alongside the shock came immense pride.
I felt proud not only of what he could do, but of who he was becoming. Observing him face challenges with determination, handle relationships with thoughtfulness, and express creativity in quiet, subtle ways filled me with a sense of awe. It was a proud, almost parental awe, a recognition that he was developing into a remarkable individual, one whose character and abilities went beyond the image I had of him. These moments of pride were also tinged with gratitude, as I realized how fortunate I was to witness these traits firsthand. Yet, there was also a layer of worry. Even as I admired his qualities, I couldn't ignore the responsibility I felt as a parent. Seeing his strengths also made me aware of the challenges he might face, the pressures of life that could test his patience, creativity, or resilience. The observation made me more vigilant, more conscious of the need to guide, support, and protect him without stifling his individuality. And finally, there was relief, a profound sense of reassurance. What had begun as a rumor, something I initially doubted and approached with caution, had turned into a journey of discovery. Instead of finding cause for concern, I discovered a son who was thoughtful, capable, and remarkable in ways I had never imagined. This relief was not complacent. It was a recognition that careful observation, patience, and an open mind can lead to understanding, trust, and even a deeper bond. Emotionally, this experience was transformative. It reminded me that parenting is as much about learning as it is about teaching. It taught me to embrace curiosity, to balance vigilance with trust, and to cherish the moments when we truly see our children for who they are. These emotions, shock, pride, worry, and relief, intertwined to create a profound sense of connection, one that deepened my love and appreciation for my son in ways I could never have anticipated. As my careful observation continued, I began to see beyond the surface behaviors of my son and into the motivations, feelings, and challenges that guided them. What had initially seemed like ordinary actions now revealed a complexity of thought and emotion that I had not fully appreciated before. Watching him without judgment, simply paying attention, allowed me to step into his perspective, to see the world through his eyes, and to understand why he did what he did. I noticed, for instance, that his determination and patience were not just traits, but responses to challenges he faced. When he approached a difficult problem, he wasn't merely seeking an answer. He was testing himself, exploring different strategies, and learning resilience in the process. Observing him in these moments, I realized that what might have looked like ordinary effort, or even stubbornness, was actually a form of self-guided learning, a way for him to grow and adapt on his own terms. This understanding shifted my perspective entirely. I no longer saw mistakes or delays as failures, but as part of a thoughtful, deliberate process. His social interactions also became clearer to me. I began to see how he navigated friendships, disagreements, and cooperation. He didn't always seek approval or attention. Instead, he acted in ways that reflected his understanding of fairness, empathy, and mutual respect. Observing him closely helped me appreciate the effort he put into understanding others' feelings and perspectives, even when it wasn't immediately obvious. I realized that his quiet acts of kindness and consideration were intentional and meaningful, reflecting a depth of character that might have gone unnoticed in everyday life. Additionally, observing him helped me recognize his internal struggles. There were moments when he seemed anxious or uncertain, yet he handled them in ways that showed resilience and self-reflection. By noticing these small signals, hesitation, thoughtful pauses, or subtle body language, I gained insight into his emotional world. I began to understand not just what he did, but why he did it. the fears, hopes, and values that guided his decisions and actions. Ultimately, this period of observation deepened my empathy. I realized that understanding a child, or anyone, requires patience, attentiveness, and an openness to seeing the world from their viewpoint. By taking the time to observe and reflect, I was able to bridge the gap between parent and child, gaining insight into their motivations and emotions, and fostering a connection built on understanding rather than assumption. It was a lesson in truly seeing another human being and in the profound power of empathy to transform relationships. One of the most important lessons I learned through this experience was the danger of assumptions. Initially, I had heard a comment about my son that seemed strange, almost unbelievable. My first reaction was disbelief, followed by curiosity, and eventually a careful decision to observe him. Yet before taking that step, I realized how easy it would have been to jump to conclusions, simply believing a rumor without seeking the truth for myself. This reflection made me painfully aware of how often assumptions can cloud our judgment, especially when it comes to the people we care about most.
It was tempting to rely on secondhand information, to let someone else's perspective shape my understanding of my son. After all, hearing that strange thing about him could have led me to view him differently, perhaps even unfairly, without giving him a chance to explain or demonstrate who he truly was. I saw firsthand how assumptions, even well-meaning ones, can create unnecessary worry, tension, and misunderstanding. They can distort reality and prevent us from seeing the full picture, particularly when the person involved is someone we love and think we know intimately. By choosing to observe rather than judge, I discovered a far more accurate and meaningful truth about my son. I learned that he was thoughtful, creative, empathetic, and resilient, qualities that no rumor or passing comment could ever capture. This reinforced the lesson that assumptions are rarely reliable, and that patience, curiosity, and direct observation are far more effective ways to understand people. It also reminded me that our perceptions are limited by our own experiences and biases, and that giving someone the space to reveal themselves naturally is essential to truly knowing them. This experience also extended beyond my relationship with my son. It became a life lesson in how I approach people and situations in general. I realized that listening to rumors or forming opinions based solely on others' words is often misleading. The responsibility to seek understanding rests with us, and it requires an open mind, careful attention, and a willingness to challenge our initial reactions. Ultimately, this lesson about assumptions was a humbling reminder that trust and understanding are built through observation, empathy, and patience, not through hearsay or speculation. It reinforced the importance of slowing down, looking deeper, and giving people the benefit of careful, thoughtful consideration before passing judgment. In doing so, we not only learn the truth about others, but also grow in our own capacity for understanding and compassion. As I continued to observe my son and gradually uncover the layers of his personality, I realized that this experience was doing more than simply revealing facts about him. It was fundamentally transforming our relationship. What began as a cautious, almost skeptical observation evolved into a deeper connection built on empathy, trust, and mutual understanding. I began to see him not just as my child, but as a unique individual with his own thoughts, emotions, and perspective on the world. This realization reshaped the way I interacted with him, and in doing so, strengthened the bond between us. One of the key ways our relationship grew was through empathy. By taking the time to notice the subtleties of his behavior, his thoughtfulness, his creativity, the way he approached challenges, I learned to appreciate the world as he experienced it. I began to understand the effort behind his actions, the intentions behind his decisions, and the emotions he sometimes struggled to express. This awareness made me more patient, compassionate, and responsive. I wasn't simply a parent correcting behavior or giving instructions. I became someone who truly saw him and tried to understand his inner life. The process also improved our communication. As I observed, I became more intentional in how I spoke to him, asking thoughtful questions and listening more carefully to his answers. Conversations shifted from superficial exchanges about daily routines to deeper discussions about his ideas, challenges, and aspirations. He, in turn, seemed to sense my genuine interest and trust, and he became more open and willing to share his thoughts and feelings. This mutual exchange created a new layer of connection built on respect and understanding rather than authority alone. Finally, the experience strengthened our trust. By observing without judgment and allowing him space to reveal himself, I demonstrated that I respected his individuality. He, in turn, gained confidence that I could be relied upon to listen, support, and understand him without jumping to conclusions. Trust became a two-way street. I trusted his character and judgment, and he trusted that I would not betray or misunderstand him. In the end, this journey of careful observation taught me that relationships, especially with children, are not static. They require attention, patience, and a willingness to see the other person fully. By approaching my son with curiosity, empathy, and respect, I found that not only did I understand him better, but our bond grew stronger, richer, and more resilient than ever before. What began as a cautious watch turned into a profound and enduring connection that will continue to shape both of our lives.
As I look back on this experience, I realize that the journey I took, from hearing something strange about my son, to observing him carefully, to discovering who he truly is, taught me profound lessons that go far beyond parenting. It was a journey rooted in curiosity, guided by patience, and illuminated by careful observation. These principles I have come to understand are essential not only in understanding our children, but in understanding the people around us and the world we live in. Curiosity was the spark that set everything in motion. Had I dismissed the comment I heard without a second thought, I would have missed the chance to truly know my son. Curiosity encouraged me to look beyond my assumptions, to question my initial disbelief, and to open my mind to the possibility that there was more to him than I had realized. It reminded me that growth, whether in relationships or in personal understanding, begins with the willingness to ask questions and explore the unknown, rather than settling for the comfortable familiarity of what we think we already know. Patience played an equally important role. Understanding my son, like understanding anyone, could not happen overnight. It required slow, attentive observation and a willingness to accept that discovery takes time. Patience allowed me to notice the subtleties of his behavior, the quiet moments that revealed his thoughtfulness, creativity, and empathy. It reminded me that rushing to judgment or expecting immediate answers often blinds us to the deeper truths that lie beneath the surface. Observation was the bridge that connected curiosity and patience to meaningful understanding. By truly watching my son, I gained insight into his motivations, his feelings, and his challenges. Observation allowed me to see the world from his perspective and to understand the intentions behind his actions. It was through this careful attention that I was able to move from doubt to clarity, from skepticism to trust, and from surface-level awareness to deep connection. Ultimately, this experience reinforced the importance of approaching life and people with an open heart and an attentive mind. Rumors, assumptions, and incomplete information can easily lead us astray, but curiosity, patience, and careful observation enable us to see the truth more clearly. They teach us to understand before judging, to connect before criticizing, and to appreciate before assuming. This journey with my son reminded me that the effort to truly see another person is always worth it, for it not only reveals their depth, but also strengthens the bonds that make life meaningful.
Thank you for taking this journey with me today. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of the importance of truly seeing and understanding the people you love, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences or reflections in the comments below. I read everyone and would love to connect. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button to let me know, and subscribe so you don't miss any more stories that inspire curiosity, empathy, and deeper connections. Your support helps this community grow and encourages more meaningful conversations. And remember, sometimes the smallest observations can lead to the biggest discoveries. So stay curious, stay patient, and keep noticing the little things that matter.